Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. We are recording from the comfort of Tom's car following a Thursday lightning round session with Ryan Day. It's his last chance, his last opportunity to speak with us, which he loves very much. Ask a bunch of questions, answer them quickly, and then move on. And tomorrow they head to Bloomington for Saturday afternoon's matchup between the Buckeyes and the Hoosiers. And yet, Tom, the biggest news today doesn't really come from Ryan Day. It came from the Indiana side, where it was revealed that redshirt freshman quarterback Michael Penix is a game-time decision, but Ryan Day said they were preparing for both quarterbacks anyway. And it would make sense that they prepare for Peyton Ramsey, the other quarterback, given how effective he was against the Buckeyes last year. And so maybe they'll see both, maybe they'll only see one, but they're preparing to see both. And really, the Ohio State defense as it is, it's built to handle whatever you throw against it.
Right, and Penix is a little bit more of a dual threat guy. Ramsey's a little bit more of kind of a traditional drop back kind of pocket passer. But the Indiana offense is going to be essentially what we always hear about them talk about the Ohio State offense. The offense is the offense, and it's just a matter of which plays you're going to run out of that playbook.
Right.
It's not, they're not running a completely different offense. This isn't like a wildcat thing or anything. So, I mean, the week one against Ball State, Penix threw 40 passes. He carried 7 times for 67 yards, threw 40 passes for 326 yards against Ball State. So, this is still probably going to be a fairly pass-heavy offense no matter which quarterback is there. And then it's just a matter of kind of minor tweaks to how you're defending that offense.
Yeah, and if it's Penix, this would be his third start. He had a really bad interception against Ball State, threw it right to a defender. And I think that's something you're always going to get from young starters. But it's also something you might sometimes get from Peyton Ramsey, who is he's a tough guy. He's a leader. His teammates like him. Sometimes he does stuff to put the offense in bad situations, though, which is obviously why he lost the starting job. But he's one of those guys where he does a lot for you, but also has to get himself out of trouble at times because of interceptions he's thrown or something he's done poorly. And now you're set where you have to be the guy to bring everybody back, make the comeback, lead the comeback, if you will. And I don't think it's a great sign that Penix is the safer choice. He's the more dynamic of the two quarterbacks, that's for sure. But right now, Tom, the thing that surprises me about Indiana's offense is how poorly they're running the ball. I think after 2 games, Stevie Scott has just over 100 yards rushing, averaging 3.5 yards per carry. I think the team is averaging like 3.5 yards per carry. And that's not good at all for what this team needs to do. You can't rely on Penix or Peyton Ramsey to be the leader of the offense in the way Dwayne Haskins was last year. They're leaders, but you can't have them being 60% of your offense.
Right. Those are not guys who are going to put up explosive numbers in the passing game, almost certainly. I mean, last week against Eastern Illinois, which is rather notably Eastern Illinois and not an FBS team, they won 52-0. Peyton Ramsey's numbers look incredible. 13-14, 226 yards, 2 touchdowns. Penix was 14-20, 197 yards, 2 touchdowns. But, again, that's Eastern Illinois, and I have to admit I have not scouted Eastern Illinois particularly closely this year, but I'm guessing that Ohio State's going to represent a fairly significant upgrade in competition level. And in that game, I mean, you mentioned the running game, Indiana averaged 3.4 yards per carry on the ground. 3.4 against Eastern Illinois. That is, if you adjust that to the level of competition, they're losing about a yard every rush against Ohio State.
Yeah, this could be one of those games where Ohio State is negative yardage allowed on the ground in the first half again. It's ridiculous because they are throwing the ball really well. You mentioned those numbers, and yet you're not able to complement that with the running attack, which is just odd that the defense isn't able to maybe focus more on they have to worry more about the passing game because that's what's being effective, and then it doesn't open up on any of the running game. And that's a concern now and moving forward. And it's definitely a concern on Saturday, especially against an Ohio State defense that looks pretty legit against the run, giving up yards late in games and rather than the beginning of the games. I am interested to see this pass defense for the Buckeyes. Ryan Day is excited about it. We have seen nothing from them to think there are going to be issues, but this will be their best test. It's the best group of receivers they face. It's another good tight end. They'll be spread out. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they perform. How comfortable is Sean Wade? He continues to make plays on the ball as this. The bullet we consider the hybrid linebacker, but he's hitting like a linebacker. He's the first hybrid corner linebacker at Ohio State since C. Grant. And that was a move of desperation. This is a move of luxury with what they've got him doing. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the secondary does. Jordan Fuller, more out there with Damon Arnett, Jeff Okuda. Those guys are playing at a high level. And if Indiana doesn't run the ball, which we don't expect them to run the ball well, and if the secondary is locking these guys down, and tackling especially, because they're going to throw some quick stuff, so we'll see how well they tackle. Mm-hmm. They've done a fantastic job this season, but I think the test will be much more difficult than it has been so far this season in that regard.
Yeah, this is a test that gets more difficult than what they've seen so far, but this is also a very manageable test, because even if you have, Indiana has some skill talent at some spots, and you've got some guys that you don't want to let them get loose in space. But if Indiana is as one-dimensional as it seems like they could be, that limits that a lot. Because then, I might get a job at ESPN after I say this, but they just can. The defensive line can just pin their ears back and rush the passer because you don't have to worry about the run game. See, that was that empty and vacuous enough to maybe get me a job in Bristol?
You're on your way.
Awesome, big time. I just need to put a mascot head on my head, and we'll be all set. Goodbye, Columbus. Hello, Connecticut.
Although if you do that in the car, you might die because it can get really hot. That wouldn't make for great sound, either the muffled or the dying.
That's true. Yeah, I have to crack the windows. Don't leave me in the car.
Do not leave your mascots in the car, even with the windows cracked. It is very hot in the car for a mascot. Just keep that in mind, people.
So this should be a game where they can get a little bit more of a test. I'm legitimately interested to see the defensive backs playing in space a little bit more with Indiana throwing the ball around a lot more than like Cincinnati did last week. Because you mentioned the tackling, there's also just the discipline, the making sure guys are in the right spots, making sure guys aren't over pursuing, all of that kind of stuff. And we have seen them rally to the ball extremely well this year. That's something that we've heard them talk about as a point of emphasis. That's something we've seen on the field. And this is the kind of game where you need to see that again, because Indiana's skill position guys are good enough that they're going to, if they make a guy miss, you can turn a short pass into a long gain. How well Ohio State goes and really attacks the ball, 4 to 6, A to B every play of the game, that's going to determine whether this is let's just stipulate, this is an Ohio State-Indiana game in Bloomington. It's going to be stupid for a while. It's going to be a 7-point game at halftime for no discernible reason. But how well and how disciplined they play and how fundamentally sound they are with tackling, all of that's going to determine whether this is, a 10-7 game after the first quarter and then Ohio State pulls away after that, or whether this is a game that drags into halftime and into the third quarter and possibly beyond.
I'm interested to see, will Indiana try to take advantage of the whole Pete Werner wheeling around to safety situation now that they've seen more film? Will they be able to handle that or just take some shots on that and just put Werner in a situation that he struggled with last year, being locked down with receivers, which any linebacker would struggle with, and try to find some spots to take advantage of a defense that I still think is holding some cards back. And there's no, and how do they adjust to those? So there's some very interesting matchups. We mentioned the tight end, which has not, I wouldn't say it's been an issue for the defense. It's been an issue relative to how well they've handled the receivers. Tight ends have been getting some yardage against them, but hasn't really ended up in points so much. So they've been able to handle that. How aggressive will this defensive line be? We know they'll continue to attack. How often do they need to blitz to put whatever quarterback they have in a tough situation? There's going to be a lot of moving parts, and this is going to be the first time, I think, really where Ohio State, the defense will be put in a situation where there will be more opportunity for leverage to be lost, or maybe more one-on-one situations. And will they handle that? Will they excel as they have been? And this will be if a big play is broken, I think this would be the game more likely than the last game to have that happen. But as you said, it's a slight step up. I view it like I was writing about this in the tip sheet today. If you view the first portion of this season like a video game, and each game is a level, and the boss at the end of the FAU level, that's not so terrible. The boss at this level is a little bit tougher than the last boss, but it's still just the third level, and so they should be able to handle that Indiana offense and just wear them out and wear on them. And the defensive line and against the Indiana offensive line, that's why we always see in the fourth quarter Ohio State finds a way. That's what Indiana has talked about all week, is not allowing that to happen. And you can talk about it, but when it's just wave after wave of defenders for the Buckeyes, defensive line, linebackers, and we'll see what happens with Damon Arnett. He was in the orange jersey this week. Yeah. Maybe we'll see on Friday whether Jonathan Cooper plays. I'm not expecting it, but there are some question marks, with who might be out there. Tyreek Friday, I did that last week. Tyreek Smith, Tyler Friday seemed good to go again. Teron Vincent, we don't know yet. So there are some question marks about the Ohio State defense, but the depth is what will have them be okay, I think. Yeah,
Teron Vincent was in a sling last week, so I would not expect to see Teron Vincent this week. Damon Arnett, like you mentioned, was in an orange jersey.
But he was also in a cast the other.
Yeah, he's had a cast on his wrist and has played with it, and I don't think he's even been listed as a.
No.
I think that might just be a purely precautionary thing. Just so you know, the orange jerseys, it's like those orange penny jerseys that they wear on top. Like you used to wear in elementary school gym class when you're playing dodgeball or whatever. That is generally a limited contact. That's usually what that means, which means that's someone who's participating in drills and all that, and who is just, if they're doing a tackling drill, he might not be doing that that week. So that generally is something that I would expect that person to be playing on Saturday when you see that. Jonathan Cooper is kind of an open question that. Ryan Day is starting to get questions about Jonathan Cooper, so it's getting closer. But maybe this week, maybe next week, maybe Nebraska. But it seems like there's probably some progress there. We won't find out until they release that report on Friday morning. This is when you look at Ohio State's depth chart and you're like, they are 3 deep with 4-star players everywhere across that defensive line. This is when that pays off. You're missing a 5-star defensive tackle in Teron Vincent. You're missing a guy who was a borderline 5-star defensive end in Jonathan Cooper. And it just kind of keeps rolling because, they got Tyreek Smith back. They've got Tyler Friday back. Those are another 2 4-star defensive ends. They've got a 5-star defensive end in Zach Harrison. He's the 3rd stringer. It's just the depth there. It pays off, in the game because they can keep rotating and keep guys fresh. But you're going to have injuries. Every single football season, you're going to have injuries. The fact that they have a much smaller step down to that second level, that second string of player on that defense compared to most other teams, that's why Ohio State generally, at the end of the year, is stronger than a lot of other teams. Because even if you have that good top-level talent, if that step, if you go from a 5-star to a 3-star, at a position and you lose that top guy, that's a big loss. And Ohio State just has so much depth everywhere, but especially along that defensive line.
You even see that at linebacker where you lose 5-star Keandre Jones to transfer at Maryland, where he's now one of the top tackles for loss guys in the Big Ten. Justin Hilliard, 5-star linebacker, has been out for most of his career. And even in the secondary, Tyreek Johnson finally got some action last week, 5-star defensive back. And all of that depth just wears on you. And where I think it's really going to wear on Indiana is the Ohio State offensive line.
Yeah.
Where they're going to continue to just pound and pound and pound. And Ryan Day, for all of the talk of, he's this quarterback guru, and he is, and he likes to throw the ball, he still definitely believes in running the ball. And he'll give J.K. Dobbins every opportunity to get his 25 carries this week. He also mentioned that Master Teague had a good week, and he will get more carries. And I saw some talk on the board wondering if it was because J.K. Dobbins might be banged up after he didn't touch the ball in the second half last week, but he did come into block, so I don't think there's any injury concerns there. This is about Master Teague continuing to practice well, continuing to play well, running hard, and for me, this is about rewarding him with more opportunities. Last week, I wondered if he should have gotten a series in the first half, and I don't know if he will this week, but it sounds like it's more of a possibility than it was a week ago.
Well, I think that expecting more of Master Teague this week may have something to do with injuries, but I don't think it's a J.K. Dobbins injury. I think it might have to do with Master Teague finally being closer to healthy. He missed a huge amount of fall camp with, I don't know that we ever actually heard the nature of the injury, but he missed a bunch of fall camp, and there was just kind of this like four-way battle for that backup running back spot. Now that Teague's been healthy a couple weeks, you have kind of progressively seen more and more of him and a little less of DeMario McCall, where it seems like even if Teague is not the pure, only sole number 2 running back, that in a lot of the running between the tackles kind of situations, and hey, it's 3rd and 3 and J.K. Dobbins can't run, that seems like that is becoming the Master Teague role in the offense. And Ryan Day has sort of, I don't know if he's actually said it, but he has sort of hinted around the idea that DeMario McCall might be a little bit more of a third down back for them, and a little bit of a Darren Sproles type, or whatever example you want to use there. Ronnie Harmon for you old schoolers. Just Teague, though, seems like he is kind of starting to get control of that backup job. And I mean, when you watch him run, he hits like a wrecking ball. Yeah. He is not a huge dude, but he is built solidly. He's a lot faster than he looks, and he hits that hole hard. And whenever Ryan Day talks about J.K. Dobbins, he talks about wanting to keep the pad level down, hitting the hole hard. That does not ever seem like it's an issue with Master Teague. No, and even when Ryan Day was talking about Master Teague, he also did mention DeMario and his importance on special teams. So it's interesting, whenever he's talking about Master Teague, he has to throw DeMario in there, and I don't want to say like talk up his role, because in the past he did mention him as a third down back, which has a label and a title, and it's a real thing, and it has this importance. It's not the backup running back though. Yeah. And then with Master Teague as clearly as the backup running back, don't forget DeMario also, he's the returner, and there is a role. And it's interesting that he makes sure to mention that. And not that either of these roles are diminished or that they are not important, because they are. But clearly Master Teague is the backup running back here. And I wonder if DeMario, I'm sure he can't love it. He would rather it be him. But the fact that Ryan Day continues to say, like, DeMario still has these roles, I think some of it is also for DeMario's ears. Yeah. And there is a lot that he can add to both of those roles. And there are still things that they will have him involved with in the passing game. A lot of that just depends on what the defense is doing. And when they find that opportunity, they'll get him involved. Just like you wrote today with the crossing routes. A lot of it, when you can do a lot of things on offense, then you don't have to do plenty of things. If the defense isn't giving you that stuff, you have other things you can do. And that's what the Ohio State offense is capable of. If right now things are better for Master Teague to be running the ball or catching in the flats with JK, that's fine. At some point, it's going to be better for DeMario, and they have him ready and willing to do that. And that flexibility gives you a lot more opportunity to beat different teams. And if a team is going to run something hinky like a 3-3-5, and then you're going to see, like a 5-man front another week, you can't just attack those things exactly the same way. You have to have more than one way to win, and that's true on offense. That's true on defense. If you can stop an air raid team, you can also stop a triple option team. That's pretty good. You've got to be able to do both of those if you're facing teams like that on your schedule. Ohio State has enough talent in enough different spots. They have different ways to win. They can win just pounding the ball between the tackles. They can win spreading you out and throwing the ball. They can win spreading you out and running the ball. They can do all of that stuff, and sometimes there's different guys. But I mean, to touch on the crossing routes thing I wrote about today, that is dictated a lot by what the opponent is showing them. If the opponent is showing them kind of like a press man coverage, then yeah, you're going to run those crossing routes, and just that is a man beater route, and you have someone in press coverage and they get picked off on the mesh or just bumping into the official or wherever it is, and that turns a short, you can throw the ball 5 yards in the air and turn it into a 60-yard touchdown. When the opponents are showing a lot of zone, which Ohio State's seen a lot of this year, that stops working, because then there's just a linebacker sitting in the middle of the field, and he can either bump that receiver off the route or just tackle him right there or break up the pass, and all of a sudden that doesn't work. So Ohio State has done a very good job not being stubborn and going, well, this is what we do. We run mesh. Of course we're going to run mesh. If that's not there against the opponent, they have another way to win. And they have done a very good job being patient, being aware of what is there for them to take, and just taking it. I mean, for Justin Fields to have a 76% completion percentage through 2 weeks, that means they're taking what the opponents are giving him. That's a higher completion percentage than Dwayne Haskins had last year. And, obviously this has not been the highest possible level competition the first 2 weeks, but that, for a guy who came in with accuracy being kind of one of the, wait and sees with Justin Fields, to be at 76% through 2 weeks and not have it just be a bunch of little touch passes and, little 4-yard dink dunk crossing routes over the middle, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, although I will say Dwayne Haskins was completing 79% of his passes at this time last year, so let's slow down on the Justin Fields hype. Also, regarding what Indiana might show or what a defense might show, we do know that there are answers for everything except for the bear front, double eagle bear front. At that point, there's nothing you can do because nobody has ever heard of it. And so you just have to fold and then hope that your phone number has, in case of emergencies, that people can access, and call loved ones to come and pick you up, pick up your bloodied corpse and take you home. With the double eagle bear front, there's nothing you can do. So I would hope that you would hope that Indiana doesn't do that if you're the Ohio State offense. Also, why not make the entire plane out of that front?
So really, if you're an Ohio State fan, you have to hope that, we know Ryan Day listens to the podcast. You have to hope Tom Allen isn't listening to the podcast, because Gerd just kind of gave away one of the big state secrets, and
that is actually literally a state secret. Garrett Wilson had his best week of practice, according to Ryan Day. I asked him what that meant. He just, he's talking about basically the maturation process of taking everything more seriously, and not that he wasn't taking things seriously before, but now it's taking them more seriously and getting the production there, as we have a crowd around us now because everybody loves podcasts. So there's that. We'll see how much more we see him this week. Got to see him a little bit last week as well. And that's just another area for Justin Fields to find guys to throw to, guys to get involved, make that running offense even more dangerous, because now you've got the play action off of that. And this passing game, it hasn't been prolific because they haven't needed it to. But I have the full confidence that it could be if that's what is required. And that's one of those things that Urban Meyer would talk about. A balanced offense isn't necessarily 50-50. It's being able to do whatever you want whenever it is called for. And I think that's what we're seeing from this passing game now. There's plenty there, and players are stepping up. And now when you've got some freshmen that are rising as well, kind of like Chris Olave did towards the second half of the season, it also makes the other guys work harder as well when you've got the young guys nipping at their feet. And if that's, maybe we credit Garrett Wilson for how well Benjamin Victor is playing right now.
That's not the dumbest thing you've ever said.
It's not.
You have to. This is a team where the depth and the speed with which some of the younger guys are ready to contribute has to keep pushing those guys who are higher up in the depth chart. You can get bumped down the depth chart with by a freshman or a sophomore, even if you're a returning starter. I mean, I think back to when I was in school and Buster Tillman was the starter at one of the wide receiver positions, and then David Boston showed up, and all of a sudden Buster Tillman didn't play basically his senior year. Like that can happen, and I think you're seeing that. You are seeing and you're hearing that Garrett Wilson is starting to come along. I mean, you talk to Justin Fields about Garrett Wilson, and it's like, oh yeah, we know he can make plays like that. It was, Garrett Wilson goes up over a defensive back to high point a ball, make a great catch, very similar to the one he did in the spring game. But this was not against the third team corner. This was against a pretty good Cincinnati defense and one of their starting three corners. I mean, that was a pretty impressive play. And Justin Fields' response was kind of like, yeah, well, I mean, we see that from Garrett all the time. We know he can do that. So the physical talent's obviously there. If you're getting that maturation, you're getting that. I mean, Ryan Day talked about Garrett Wilson's just preparation and that kind of stuff, and that was what he was talking about with this being a great week of practice. But if you have the physical talent, and now you're getting the mental aspect of the game together, that's when you're probably ready to take a pretty big leap.
Yep, and we'll see how much that happens this week. And the thing is, as we always talk about, you may only get 3 catches, and you may only get 4 targets, and you may only get 3 targets. It's what you do when it happens, and then you're back on the sideline watching the other guy do it, and you just roll him in, and that's why Ohio State wins in the fourth quarter. And we've come right back around. Tom, I did have... To move on from Indiana, not move on, but I had a question DM'd to me the other day, and I wanted to ask you because we'll get your thought first and then mine. I was asked, are there leaders emerging on this team, and if so, who are those leaders? Is this somebody's team right now?
It seems like probably by the end of the year, this could be Justin Fields' team. I don't think he's there yet. On defense, I mean, Jordan Fuller's been a captain a couple years, but I don't know. I don't know that we've seen enough of who's the guy who's standing up in front of the team right now and
that was pretty much the question.
And I don't. And I honestly don't know.
Going on the road right now, that's a timely question.
This may be the week that you maybe find out. I feel like there's a decent chance that would be Jonathan Cooper, but that's hard to do if you're hurt.
Chase Young. They've talked about as someone who has sort of started to take that role. He has not been that guy in the past, but he was just a sophomore last year. Yeah.
So, I mean, he is probably, if you're just looking at credibility from a probably going to make a whole bunch of money this time next year kind of perspective, and from a on-field production perspective, and from a history of on-field production perspective, he's probably the best option.
If I ask you, whose defense is this?
It's probably Chase Young's.
Whose offense is this?
It's going to be Justin Fields, and I don't know who it is right now. Yeah. I mean, because last year you kind of felt like it was the wide receivers. It was, like Paris Campbell and Terry McLaurin and Johnny Dixon. And I don't know, maybe it's KJ Hill, but I don't know that KJ Hill is that's not really his personality.
Right.
And I think if Jonah Jackson had been here for multiple years, then it would be Jonah Jackson's offense, but it's hard for that to... for you to be in that role when you've only been on campus for a couple months.
Has he even ever won at Indiana? That would be a good question.
Probably not.
This is good. It could be a first for him. Guys, I just want to let you know, he'll talk after the game. This is the high point in my career, getting this win at Indiana. I never thought it would happen. I want to credit everybody here. I couldn't have done it without you guys. Thank you very much. And This is unbelievable. To win at Indiana, who would have ever thought when I went to Rutgers that this would happen?
Rutgers won in 2000. Well, they won in 2015, so he would have been a
true freshman.
True freshman that year. So 55-52. That seems like an extremely at Indiana game.
Yeah.
And then they lost 33-27, 41-0, and 24-17.
Yeah, so this would be a good one for him to actually finally play during a win over Indiana, assuming the Ohio State Buckeyes win. But yeah, I think, like you said, this will eventually be Justin Fields' team. We've seen growth from him each week. I don't know that there is one yet. I think Chase Young is probably the guy who maybe talks to the team. Who is that Paris Campbell? Mm-hmm. Even though everybody loves Tuf Borland and he'll get fired up, he's also a quiet guy when we see him.
Yeah.
But it's strange that KJ is a quiet wide receiver. I didn't know those things existed. But yeah, it's an interesting question going on the road this week, thinking you'll need some of that leadership to step up. And I guess maybe, like you said, this is where we find out who that is.
I feel like we have a better idea who the leaders on the 2021 team are going to be or the 2020 team. Like next year, it's going to be Justin Fields' team. 2 years from now, I think there's a pretty decent chance it's like Harry Miller's team 2 years from now. That was someone that Day got asked about on Thursday. And, he said it's a testament to Harry Miller that he's on the second team offense right now. He's out repping with the twos during practice, and you don't notice him. It's a true freshman out there who didn't even enroll early. He wasn't here over the spring. He just enrolled in the summer, got here, and just immediately just was right out with the twos. And you don't notice him because he's not messing stuff up. He's not making the freshman mistakes that you see from all of the other freshmen. He's just out there, and he's just one of the other guys who's out there. And I mean, he has played, I don't know, 15 snaps, 20 snaps, something like that. I mean, 2 games into your season, or to your career as a true freshman to be playing at center, and he's not playing in the first quarter of games. And if they're up by 3 points against someone in the fourth quarter, he's not going to be playing then either, probably. But he is someone who is already starting to position himself as, when Jonah Jackson leaves next year, maybe he slides out to the guard spot. Next to Josh Myers, and then when Josh Myers leaves, then Harry Miller becomes a center. I mean, that seems like that's a real plausible thing, and and at that point, like, okay, now you're Billy Price, like that's, and then you are one of the team leaders, and that seems very likely that's kind of the path that his career could take.
I think it's safe to say right now he is a year ahead of Josh Myers, where Josh Myers was.
Oh, absolutely. Maybe more.
At this point last year, like they did play him, but I don't know that they were this comfortable with him as they are with Harry Miller. So I wonder what happens, because we have to assume that Harry Miller is growing at a different rate than Josh Myers, even now. Mm-hmm. What happens if he catches Josh Myers, and Josh Myers wins the Bloomington next year, all right, redshirt junior, but he's going to come back because he's a center. If Harry Miller is better, if he surpasses him, like, I don't see any way they would move him, but it would be interesting for a Remington winner to then have to move, for somebody better, and not that would put any pressure on Harry Miller, but it's another very good problem to have. And for as much as we talk about how much they love Garrett Wilson, they love Harry Miller. Yeah. And if you had to rank them in order of which ones they would most not want to lose, least want to lose, he would be so high on that list, because he's doing stuff that they've never seen before. And anytime you have that, you don't want to lose it.
Right. There are other true freshmen who are playing early and playing in kind of similar roles. I mean, Zach Harrison is doing that on the defensive end, and maybe even playing more than Harry Miller. But you've seen true freshmen do that at defensive end. Defensive end is an easier spot to get on the field than offensive line as a true freshman, and that's especially true at center, because there's so much more of the mental game where you're making your line calls. You're in charge of a whole lot of stuff when you're the center. You're not just block that guy in front of you. And So for him to be on the field this early, that's pretty significant, and it bodes pretty well for what's coming in the next couple of years for him.
Yep. All right. Are you ready to get to some score predictions, Tom?
Sure.
How do you think Michigan's going to do this week?
I think that their offense probably, well, it can't possibly look as bad as it did last week. I don't think they'll score as much as it did last week, but I predict their defense to pitch a shutout. So I'm going to say I'm going to pick them for a scoreless tie this week.
I'm not ready to go that far. We'll see. I'll have something maybe later on that I'm not ready to make any definitive statements. The Ohio State-Indiana game, the line continues to climb with the Penix news. Mm-hmm. So I think it's up to maybe like 17.
I might have seen it at 18 somewhere.
18 now. So I gave my score prediction last night. I think I said 38-13. And I feel okay about that, except I'm starting to wonder if maybe the Ohio State offense should have more points and the defense should maybe give up fewer, because this is when I thought Penix was going to play. But again, Ramsey has put up points against the Ohio State defense before. And as you said, these games start stupidly all the time. So I think I'll stick with 38-13. I think I went 31-13 last week. So I'll go one touchdown more.
I went 38-20, which
okay.
So we are either both extremely correct or blinded by groupthink and all of the other internet things that people say. It seems like it'll be 14-10 at some point, and everyone's gonna have their brains melting out of their ears. And then the talent differential will kick in, and Ohio State will pull away, and then Indiana scores a late touchdown, and so I could very easily see it being something in that 38-13 kind of range, and then Indiana scores a late touchdown against a third-team defense, and then I'm right, and you have to write again about how smart I am in the following week's picks.
Oh, let's hope, for that sake alone, that there is no late touchdown by the Indiana Hoosiers. If the Buckeyes get into the 40s, I think that I wouldn't say it would require a defensive score. I just think it would be the most likely, because we'll see what this offense does. Not that I have reservations, but I always want to see it perform against this next level. And so I definitely think they could be in the 40s. 38 just seems like a good number.
And Indiana, I mean, we've talked a ton about their offense. Their defense is their defense is fine. I mean, Tom Allen, their head coach, his background is as a defensive coach. So that is, in the same way that Ryan Day is the head coach, but also spends a lot of time thinking about the passing attack because he was a quarterbacks coach and an offensive coordinator. Tom Allen spends a lot of time thinking about defense. Now, that didn't really make a difference last week when it was Luke Fickell who thinks about defense and gave up 42 points last week. But this is a respectable Indiana defense. I think that S&P Plus had Indiana somewhere in the 50s on offense and somewhere in the 40s on defense. So, the defense is, the offense is fine. It's okay. The defense is probably a little better than that. So this is, again, Ohio State is kind of like easing their way into the pool. They're not diving headfirst into the cold pool. It's getting a little more difficult every week, but a manageable amount. Yeah. It's not, you're not walking out into the lake and you step off a shelf and all of a sudden you're in 20-foot deep water. It's a nice gradual slant away from the beach, and so, they're up to their knees this weekend. Maybe they're mid thighs.
Only takes 2 inches of water time.
But I mean, once the Penix hits the water, it gets chilly.
We almost made it.
Almost
made it. But that will do it. Fittingly, we'll have to call it a day. Want to thank you all for listening. Tom, is there anything else?
No, I think we've done quite enough.
I think you've done enough, Tom. So thank you all for listening. We will see you after the game Saturday. Oh, I don't know, 5-ish, 4:45-ish, something like that. 4:30 maybe. I don't know when we'll get out of there.
Yeah, something like that.
Just set several alarm reminders every 15 minutes, and we will see you then. Thank you all for listening. Have a good day.